Okay, guys, for this one, I would like to talk about a specific idea that has been brought up by people who have been doing this a lot longer than me. Now, the idea I'm talking about is the one brought up by Actual Justice Warrior. Now, Actual Justice Warrior has been commentating for a long time, and I would say he's gotten pretty smart about it. Now, I would also say he's pretty emotional sometimes, too. He's just so sick of all the BS going on in the world, and I don't blame him. However, his idea, and this is one that should be more widely accepted amongst the population, is the idea that poverty doesn't cause crime. Instead, crime causes poverty. Now, we have been talking for a long time within the United States that we should eliminate poverty, and therefore that should eliminate crime. After all, people are stealing, in theory, in order to feed their families. We all think of every single person out there in the world as an Aladdin, somebody who is poor, and, well, I'm talking about the criminals. People who are poor, who only steal because they have to get bread in order to feed their family. However, inside the United States, this is no longer the case. Maybe in some third world country, people steal because they're hungry, but not here in America. We are so rich, so prevalent in resources inside of America, that even our homeless people are obese. We have people who are living on the street right now who are vastly overweight, able to survive on the bare minimum amount of money, being able to buy, say, like a Big Mac or something like that. Our food is very unhealthy in America. But as you can tell, poverty is no longer just about being, well, not able to gather resources. You're able to get as much food as you possibly could ever need, even if you're completely and utterly impoverished, partially because of soup kitchens. So, people are not desperate for food. That's not something that's going on in the world, at least not in America. And you can get clothing pretty easily as well as some sort of housing situation going on, even if that is just a tent pitched up in the middle of the woods somewhere. It is actually very easy to get some kind of protection against the elements, to get some kind of clothes on your back, to get food in your stomach. So poverty doesn't cause crime. After all, if you're able to get everything you need just by living on the streets, then why would you ever need to steal something? Now, you could make the argument that these people are trying to get a home or something along the lines, but it is also very easy to get a job nowadays. That's where the idea that poverty doesn't cause crime. That is a misnomer. Instead, crime causes poverty. Now, what exactly does that mean? You see, a lot of businesses out there in the world, such as supermarkets, make very little actual money. These businesses have to buy at a relatively um, high price for their goods and sell it for a slightly higher price, making a bare minimum money. And a lot of food will go bad and will have to be thrown out, meaning that they have very little margins in order to survive. Therefore, if you have criminals coming into the place and stealing a lot of the food, in California it's up to $500 worth of goods and services. If you steal that amount of goods, the cops will actually bother to show up. This was also the case in New York City. There was a certain threshold of theft that was required for the cops to actually bother to show up. Well, when businesses are working on such low margins, they cannot survive in that neighborhood. A lot of people, especially older people who may be working off of a fixed income, want to be able to keep their homes. However, these businesses cannot survive in neighborhoods in which they are being robbed all the time, and insurance will not cover them. After all, insurance will cover certain scenarios, such as your business being burned down, but these insurance companies will only pay out the insurance amount if you are able to have your place of business torn down after a fire and then rebuilt. They only will cover up to a certain amount of repairs, not up to. They will not cover you before you bother to actually repair the businesses. And since a lot of these businesses don't have the money to make repairs, they will just abandon the building altogether and sell it off for pennies on the dollar. And then they'll just go there abandoned for basically forever, especially if you get to a place like Detroit, where you will find a lot of these places burned to the ground and never torn down, just sitting there basically forever. Now, when these businesses leave, those people who can't leave the neighborhood because they don't have enough money to move into a new home, or because the job or the housing market is so terrible, will no longer be able to have a job in the neighborhood, which means that they will not be able to afford as many luxury goods. When they're spending less money in the neighborhood, more businesses have to close down because they're not making a profit anymore, since people are not buying the goods anymore. Therefore, more businesses shut down, more people lose their jobs, and the cycle continues. This leads people in the neighborhood to have to get less and less well-paying jobs. Jobs that are absolutely necessary for the area, but there's only so many jobs to go around. This is what causes people to go for long periods of time without being able to get a good paying job. And then those people are paid pennies on the dollar in order to get government benefits. Certain government benefits will pay you out, but as long as you're continuously applying to new jobs. And when you stop applying for jobs, if you stop looking for jobs, the government will stop paying you for looking. Now, you also have to be monitored somewhat in order to prove that you were actually looking for jobs, which means they sometimes have to have proof that you looked for a job and that the company refused to actually hire you. And if they find that you've been trying to game the system, if you had been turning down job offers, that means that, well, sucks to be you, your benefits will be cut off. And when your benefits are cut off, and even if these benefits are paying very, very little to begin with, well, you're going to start becoming impoverished because you still have bills to pay. You still have to buy food. You still have to buy new clothing and what have you. And if you're making less than a certain amount of money per year and you're worth less than a certain amount of money, well, then you are considered impoverished or living in poverty. This is why crime actually causes poverty and not the other way around. Because when you have people inside these big cities who are trying to push for lower and lower sentences for people who commit crimes, that means that more people will end up committing crimes because there's no incentive to not do it. Even if only 1% of the neighborhood is actually committing these crimes, that's enough to destroy entire businesses because the margins on these businesses are so tiny. Now, as I said, this can destroy entire neighborhoods, and again, there's certain punishments that are given out to people in these big cities that are pretty meager. For example, in cities like Chicago and Detroit, the punishments for a teenager committing these crimes is pretty low. Now, this is especially true in Chicago, where there's a lot of big gangs running around. And these gangs know that a 15-year-old committing a crime will get a lesser punishment than someone who is 18 or 19. So the people at the top of the gangs will actually get these kids to commit most of the crimes in the neighborhood. They'll be the ones with the gun. They'll be the ones actually committing the actual arson, or they'll be the ones engaging in gang violence, knowing that they'll be let off with a slap on the wrist. And sometimes they'll even be let go without any bail. And they'll just go into hiding for a while, and the system will just kind of forget about them. And then when these gangsters are eventually old enough, when they're like 18 or 19, they'll start recruiting new gang members who are 14, 15, and have them start to commit all the crimes and be able to get away with it. And even if someone who is like 15 ends up in jail for another 10 years, all they'll do is they'll meet more gang members who are inside the prison, and they'll learn how to do these crimes more efficiently, or that they'll learn how to actually get away with these crimes more easily, or to how to use, well, kids that are younger than them to do the crimes for them. And then these kids come out of jail when they're like 25 or 30, somewhere around that area, and now there will be big time gangsters who actually know how to commit crimes more effectively, having not been at all rehabilitated, since a lot of these kids are also in some form or fashion a social or a psychopath. This is where problems get really, really bad in these neighborhoods, when they're starting to burn down their rival gangs' hideouts, or they're sending fires just for the hell of it, or because they're like protesting for like BLM or Antifa or some other like radical extremist group. Well, they'll end up causing more and more poverty in the area. It is frustrating that these kids are not getting the proper types of punishment, that or prisons do not actually rehabilitate, that these people are getting more and more violent, more and more extreme, and having to prove themselves to their gangs or to whatever extremist organization that they belong to, such as Antifa. And they have to do more and more radical things to prove that they're actually part of this movement of one sort or another, or whether they actually have the balls to do what they believe is necessary to show that they are true men or what have you. This destroys the lives of those who are on fixed incomes or have to work some menial job in order to improve their lives. And when you have plenty of people now hooked on drugs, spending every bit of their money on the next big hit, well, these people end up impoverished as well, because drugs are pretty expensive. It's the same with people who are on like tobacco, for example, having to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars per year to get their next smoke. Yeah, sure, the actual drug dealers might be getting rich, but they end up in jail just like everybody else. Whereas the people that are hooked on the drugs are now spending an inordinate amount of money in order to pay for their drugs. And that leads to poverty. Again, it's the crime leading to the poverty, not the actual poverty leading to the crime. After all, in any neighborhood throughout the country, no matter where you are, well, public schools are paid for by taxpayer dollars, which means you can get an education relatively easily. And even if you are relatively impoverished, you can still get a lot of government grants or grants from a local, like, oh god, I can't think of the actual term, nonprofit organization in order to pay for your college education. But a lot of these people like to take a shortcut to get their gold chains and their street cred much easier by doing something completely and utterly dangerous or reckless to the neighborhood. This is why I actually really like Actual Justice Warrior and a bunch of other content creators, because they offer perspectives that I never really thought about before. And this is something that everyone should look into. Not just Actual Justice Warrior, but a lot of different content creators. I listen to like Liberal High Mind, for example, or I listen to Ace 1918, which a lot of people may not recognize that name, but he talks a lot about pretty dumb people inside the political world that, you know, people may fly under the radar for a lot of people. Or you can also listen to guys like Benny Johnson or The Quartering, for example. Now, I haven't been listening to those guys lately, but I am listening to a bunch of other people. Now, Styx Hexenhammer is an interesting guy to listen to as well. Romanian TV, again, these guys are not currently on my list, but they're pretty interesting to listen to. Let's see here. Who else? I said Liberal Hive Mind. Yellow Flash 2 is a guy I listen to. Yellow Flash, his second channel, which is now his main channel. He doesn't really use Yellow Flash comics very much anymore, except to post clips of his streams. I also listen to Clownfish TV, for example. They're pretty good. And that's stuff that you want to listen to, both Yellow Flash and Clownfish, if you want more of the media-driven stuff, talking about stuff like Star Wars or movies coming out and cartoons. Those guys are pretty interesting. I also listen to Arch Warhammer, who just goes by Arch now, especially his Archcast channel, which talks more about politics. And then you can also listen to, I said Romanian TV. Oh, I have an entire list. It's on my phone here, but I can't really look it up while making a video. Well, anyways, I mention a lot of guys here or there, and they're pretty interesting to listen to, and I would highly suggest you go watch a bunch of them. Romanian TV has a second channel called Lack of Entertainment, which is also about more entertainment-focused stuff, like movies and television and such as the like. Trying to think of other people I have listened to in the past. I used to listen to Nuclear Grifter. His views were a little bit more on the nose. Like he wouldn't censor himself very much, and he ended up getting banned for that. His name on YouTube was Nukey G, Nukey and space G, and he tried making a second channel to ban evade, but I'm probably not going to work out for him very well. You can still find him on Twitter X though. What else? I can't really think of anything else off the top of my head. There are a bunch of different content creators I listen to, but I can't really think of them all. I always get used to looking them up. I have an entire list of them, and I put them up as I search through their channels one by one. Now, Liberal High Mind, like I said, is pretty good. And then, God, I'd like to give at least one more that I'm currently listening to. Oh, well, I don't want too much dead air on here, and this is about enough time for me to say goodbye, guys, so I'll leave it there, and I'll give you more suggestions later, but continue to watch me as well, because I got my own perspective that I think makes me slightly different from all those other guys I listen to, so enjoy your night, guys, enjoy your day, enjoy your afternoon, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.